Well, hey.
Do 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 do. Brilliant. Right, so slight change up for the books. Now, hopefully, no one's listening as this streams, but we thought we'd step away slightly from the rugby aspect of what Line Break podcast is, and converge all our interest in the fact that we all seem to be big fans of Game of Thrones. So we thought we'd dedicate a podcast to that and have a chat about it, and see how that goes.
Yeah. I mean, my reason is with all this new Northern Hemisphere rugby dominance,
Well, I imagine their
we're just going to have to
constitution is...
wait until Drogon eats someone slimy like Dario and see what happens.
Dario's not going to get eaten. But no, I mean, considering... I mean, they're going to eat and then he's going to continue flying, and that's going to take a huge amount of effort and, a huge amount of work to...
Yeah, it's a lot of training, isn't it?
So that's why he keeps on growing, because he'll keep on eating, he'll keep on flying, so he'll keep on getting bigger, whereas the other two, the green and gold, hadn't made that connection before. We should make a joke about how they're shit like the Wallabies. How they're rather stunted, having been kept in a cave for the last series and a half or two series. So,
And Drogon's the Maro Itoje of dragons, isn't he?
exactly.
Yeah, I can see this analogy working
But
perfect.
back to the episode. It was I also thought that it would be focused entirely on what was going on at the north around Winterfell, and I was almost worried that we were going to have a bit of a bum storyline, because Marine hasn't been the most thrilling of arcs this series, but Daenerys coming back, Tyrion doing his best to abate her fury, and then the best bit was seeing when she's talking with the three other masters from the other three cities. In the background, you can see Drogon swooping down.
Yeah, flying
And at
over the
first, I
shoulder.
thought that might have been a bird, and then I thought it might have been one of the other dragons that have been let loose already. Because I would have thought they'd have been freed rather than them freeing themselves in that moment to bust out of the cave. But seeing them rain dragonfire down on the slavers' ships was, I think, absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, the fire just looked. I know that when I saw a making of episode, and they actually used huge flamethrowers mounted on these movable cranes, and how it used real fire.
Jesus.
So yeah, they use real fire rather than CGI fire, because they said that the one thing that you can't get right with CGI is fire, which is why it looks so realistic, I guess, because it is real fire that's coming out of the CGI dragon's mouth.
They just need to wait for Pixar to do a film involving fire, and they'll perfect that technology for everyone else to use, as they have with just about everything else. I was kind of perturbed at one point the fact that they were only attacking one ship, and it took me until well after my second viewing of the episode to realise that they weren't burning all the ships because they needed all the ships to transport their armies.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's working out quite well, isn't it, now that you think about it, when you see that they've got the 100-odd that Theon and Yara stole as well. So it's coming along nicely. But what my brother did say was that there seemed to be a lot of eunuchs in the room at that time.
No, Varys wasn't there. Varys had left.
No, but there were still about 5 members of the Unsullied, and then and then Grey Worm and Theon as well.
Maybe Theon Greyjoy can become an honorary member of the Unsullied. And granted, he's not that brilliant a warrior, but he is missing.
Well, he could go. He could go both ways, couldn't he? I mean, he could just when he finally meets up with Varys, just come along the most scheming politician, a cross between Littlefinger and Varys, maybe.
Yeah.
My favourite bit of the episode was definitely the bit where the woman Yara says, "Raping is our way."
No,
like
that wasn't even the best part of that conversation. That was when Daenerys says that, when they mentioned that Euron was going to demand marriage. Daenerys says, "Are you demanding marriage?" And she says, "I don't make demands, but I'm up for anything." And I mean, the look that those two gave each other in the books, Daenerys has a very, very, very bisexual relationship.
Oh yeah, well, in the books, everyone's a bit bi, aren't they? I mean, it just goes to my theory.
True, but they haven't really shown much of that in the show, with the exception of when Eerie or Jicky or Dareel were teaching her how to sex for Drogo. But I figure, I don't know whether something is going to happen there, but I thought that moment was, if nothing else, fairly amusing. Certainly
Yeah,
compared to the rest of the episode, which got a bit dark and heavy.
just a
Um,
little.
a little, because, I mean, yeah, it's. At first, I was really hoping that Ramsey would agree to John's offer of one-on-one combat and avoid anyone else dying, but that was particularly unlikely.
It
Um,
just, one of the most interesting things about that is you don't, if you read the books, you don't really get a sense of this because the POVs are so spread far and wide,
yeah,
and you don't really get to see the impact on the thoughts of other characters or non-POV characters. For instance, you never see anything from Ramsey's point of view,
yeah,
and it's really interesting to see how somebody like John has become quite a legend amongst people around in the North just on the basis of these stories that they might have heard about how
yeah,
this bastard from Ned Stark is going around. He's killed another who people didn't even thought existed anymore, and how he's reunited the North and he's going to take back the ancestral Stark home, and how he rose from the dead. And you get all these stories about how he learnt from this swordsman and that swordsman, and it becomes really interesting to see it from that point of view, which you don't really get in the books.
yeah. I mean, I do sort of wonder where Ramsey found out some of those details, but whether they've had people from the Night's Watch run away or whoever. But it was I did find really bizarre, though it does seem to be one of the more proper things of the period that this is based around, was the fact that their parley, that meeting before the day before the battle, was so civilized and so. There were no tricks and there was no backstabbery. It was all just one side on horses and the other side on horses, and they have a civil chat and try to work things out amicably before throwing off threats and riding away in a huff.
Well, I
Um,
definitely think John missed a couple of tricks there.
yeah, not to get a whole range of archers to come along and shoot them all down and then have the upper edge for the next day, but
That's definitely one of them. Or he could have just committed suicide in front of them and then have Melisandre just revive him. Or even better, he could have just done what Stannis did with Renly and just go and have some sexy time with the 800-year-old woman and let a shadow baby kill Ramsay for him.
yeah, because he does have a thing for the redheads. Um,
He definitely does, which made that scene in the trailer a little disturbing.
I can't even remember the scene, so I'm. Which scene?
We'll come back to this later in the
Yeah, okay.
spoiler edition.
Oh, why is that the trailer for the next episode?
Yeah,
Or
that's
no,
right.
still not. I've not found that yet. I was going to mention that it could be a bit no, that we'll get into that later as well. Um, Although that's not really relevant. Anyway, the battle itself, I think, I do think this is probably one of the best hours of television I've ever watched, if for no other reason than the fact that from the moment John rides away from his lines to the moment he beats the shit out of Ramsey with the Mormont shield, it
It
was
is just very intense and just constant
so
go.
compelling, so well shot, so well lit, so well done in just every aspect. And the fact that the same director is doing the next episode makes me so hopeful. But it was done so well that I watched the episode once in the morning, and then I watched it with my dad in the evening, and I still
Mm.
felt nervous. I still felt uneasy. I still felt uncomfortable. None of the feelings that I had that could have been abated by the fact that I knew everything that was going to happen would happen seemed to help.
Well, I still need to watch it again because I was deeply hungover when I watched it yesterday. Um, so I don't think I probably got the full impact of it. But that director, he's a great director, and he directed the Hard Home episode as well,
Yeah, that
which
was
I thought that was my favorite purely because the battle there comes by such a surprise. You're not expecting it to happen at all.
yeah.
Um, and then all of a sudden you're right in the middle of it. But this was the scene where John's caught underneath the fleeing wildlings and he's being
Mm.
trampled, and you can't help but think maybe this is it. Maybe he did really just come back just to die again.
That did make me feel incredibly uncomfortable. That because it is so again, that's such a very accurate way, I suppose, for so many people to have died in battles like that. It wasn't all cut with a sword and stabbed with a spike, the amount of people that would have gotten crushed in a rout would probably be horrendous. And the fact that I think I read that that decision was made because the original plans for a portion of the episode couldn't be achieved, and so the director asked David Benioff and D.B. Weiss if he could then try something else to fill up the time and bring a slightly more
Yeah,
personal
that's
touch to
right.
the
Yeah, I
battle.
did see that. So it's very interesting. I mean, that he could just ad lib a scene like that out, which is great talent, I guess, by all parties involved. But it was really interesting to see the way that they portray Ramsey's tactics in the battle, because it just seems to me that he clearly lures John out into the middle, into archery range,
Yeah.
so
Oh yeah.
that
Sansa
John
told
doesn't have
him
a choice but to go
twice.
forward.
Sansa told him twice, don't fall into his traps. And then
Mm.
John falls into the trap of running for Rickon, which I suppose he would do. And then he charges towards Rickon. And then the entire army follows. And then the rest of the army follows after that. And so it's, I mean,
Yeah, I
even
think the
on top of that, the fact that
I think
I think one of my favourite moments of the episode is the comparison between Davos and Ramsay in the disparity between their two characters and their morals. In that Davos says, knock, draw, and then no, don't do anything, stand down, you'll hit our own people, and then immediately swap to the other side of the battle, and Ramsay just says loose. And so even though half of his forces are in that melee in the middle, he's still
I
aiming and
think
firing at them.
I think it's because it seems like it comes across as Ramsey's plan.
Yeah,
Now, Ramsey's plan, it seemed to me that what he does is, you have the crosses with the flayed men on the battlefield.
yeah.
Well, I think it looked to me like those were distance
Oh
markers,
yeah,
perhaps.
and the flames will show wind direction as well.
Yeah, so
So
he's
it,
using them, and he sends out Rickon because he knows that John won't be able to resist coming out to get him, especially when he sees he's shooting at him, and
yeah.
Rickon is doing the classic thing of not running in a zigzag way.
I see so many complaints about this, and I think it's kind of unfair on Rickon, and
It is a bit unfair. He is,
lot of
what, 10
people
years old?
spouting that it's oh, it's terrible writing, oh, it's just an awful moment in the show. But it's, yeah, I mean, Rickon was what, like 5-ish when he left Winterfell, which would have been the last time he
Yeah.
had any kind of formal teaching, and so I don't think the tactics of evading archery fire were
Oh,
even
yeah,
passed
definitely.
along to him in what could be assumed to be common knowledge. And so,
And running in a zigzag pattern can be quite predictable as well.
and tiring, because it'll take longer, and he just wants to get to his brother, who he's not seen in God
Mm.
knows how long. So I think those criticisms are a bit harsh, and it's,
They are, they are. Mine, I'm just making them more as
I
a
think,
joke.
yeah,
But what
considering
he
he's,
does do is
oh, but as
yeah,
well,
he definitely lures John out.
that
Definitely gets
moment
him into
is,
the middle.
again, it's just so emotionally brutal in that the way it's shot, where I think the penultimate arrow is fired, and you think it's going to hit him, and instead it lands by his feet and he runs through it, and you're thinking, oh my god, he's actually going to make it. They're going to grab hands, he's going to get on the horse, he's going to ride, and oh shit, he's dead. It
Mm.
completely drew me in to the point where I thought, in the same way that when John was being crushed later in the fight, I thought, oh my god, he's actually going to die. I thought Rickon was actually definitely going to live, because the way they use the shots and the music cues, they set it up perfectly for him to be fine and dandy, and then arrow straight through the heart, and it's, oh
Yeah,
right, so we were right all along. But it's
yeah.
the range of emotions
It's
in
it's
that whole episode were like that, because it's seeing the Knights of the Vale arrive, like the Rohirrim in Return of the King, seeing John finally mash Ramsay round the face with a shield and start pummeling into him, versus seeing Rickon die, seeing 1-1 die. And it's, maybe that could have been called fairly predictable, considering giants are fairly wondrous, and having him around, one, eats into the CG budget, and two, is a bit of an unfair advantage against everyone. But I still think it's
it's
a shame that they killed him off.
My brother said that it was a bit of they missed a trick by not making him a massive hammer.
Well, I can't imagine that. I've seen this as well. I can't imagine the wildlings would be big on forging weapons, because I don't know where they'd be able to do that. But I
Yeah, they
suppose
wouldn't be able to,
if
I
they
guess. But
just
if he did have some kind of hammer, it would have been
if they'd given him a
pretty useful at
branch,
that.
half a tree or so, he could have swept through the shield men.
Yeah, that's a good point. He would have just broken the line straight away. But I thought that was all part of Ramsay's plan. Shooting the
Probably.
arrows and creating that wall of bodies behind them,
Yeah.
so
But
that
yeah.
they could press them up and then surround them on the other side and use the phalanx system to just crush them against one another.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what he just gambled all out on that working, and then just using them to just suffocate them inside, and it almost works, except for Sansa in an underrated move of proving how ruthless she is now. She
Yeah.
literally risks Jon's life to get the W, really. So,
Yeah. There,
what were
there.
your thoughts about that?
I think. Well, as I say, the when you hear the horn, there's that kind of that swell of excitement. Oh, what's that? And then when you see them all riding over the hill, and you see that look of oh shit, I fucked up on Ramsay's face, and then you see them charging along and charging through the ranks of Bolton men. There's that huge swell of just, I suppose, relief is a big part of it. In that, finally they're free. But then on the other hand, if you stick to think about it for just a bit, couldn't I know Sansa's not particularly trusting of many people anymore, and I know that Jon racing out into the middle of the battlefield may have expedited the plans of attack of both sides. But perhaps
Mm-hmm.
Sansa could have mentioned to Jon, oh, by the way, I've sent Littlefinger an email asking him if he'll just bring the rest of his army along. Don't attack just yet. I feel a lot of
Yeah,
bloodshed could have been avoided, and Ramsay could have been slightly more soundly routed.
yeah, definitely. It just definitely seems that maybe it will cause a problem with between them in the upcoming episode, where John will question why he didn't know
Yeah,
about this, why information's being withheld from him, considering that she did try and repair some of the damage that she'd caused to their relationship over the years earlier on in the season, but still doesn't seem to trust her, as far as she knows, one surviving relative.
yeah. Um,
But yeah, I think Sansa definitely is, objectively, she's the worst Stark character. I
really?
would definitely say so.
Well,
Yeah, she's in my top five of characters that I don't like.
oh no, I think Sansa, both by this stage in the books and where we are in the show, has grown on me immeasurably. And I think I prefer her in the books, particularly because it's not even fair in the fact that I went through a stage of disliking her in the show because she was dealt such a shitty hand. But with the way her story went, her shacking up with Ramsay, I just thought what that did to her character development was certainly stall it and potentially throw it back a bit. Um,
I think that's a bit of a misnomer though, because if you look at it this way, the payoff in this episode doesn't. It's not anywhere near as big as that if that doesn't happen.
yeah,
And as much as Ramsay was already a villain anyway, it still doesn't have the effect, the personal stakes, if he doesn't do what he did to Sansa, and if he doesn't have Rickon as well now. So that's, I think, otherwise it's just a battle for a battle's sake. It's no different to the Butter,
well,
um,
maybe.
or
Well, no, I mean, I think battle. I don't think battles for battle's sake would be quite right because it is still a battle for the Stark seat in the north, for their home, for
mm,
their land, for I suppose the rest of their bannermen. So it's uh,
yeah. If you think about it this way, though, the whole point that John comes down to Winterfell is that he receives the letter which tells him that he wants his
oh,
bride
that's
back,
true.
and that he's got his little brother, and
Yeah,
that's because otherwise John at that stage has decided pretty much to renounce the world and just go to live in Dawn for a little bit.
probably be a good idea that.
Yeah, we should probably tell him how bad it is down there.
Which is a shame. I know you feel differently, but in the I really really enjoyed where the books took the Dornish plot. I think the way it didn't not quite wrap up, but at the end of Feast or Dragons, whichever one it was, I feel, and maybe the books will reach a point where the show has gone with the killing of Doran and Areo Hota, but
I think
when
they will. I think they'll involve a lot more different characters. But the principal reason, I mean, I guess we can talk about what happens in the book with Joram because he's dead and it's
I
not going to happen in
I
the
love
show.
that bit. I love that in the book when he reveals his plans to Ilaria or Ariane, whichever one it is, to say that basically the grass that hides the snake and Oberyn being the snake can be just as dangerous. And he's got these plans. He's not just conspiring against the Lannisters, but he's got plans that are spreading far into Essos. The reveal of
Well,
that felt so like it was bringing everything together in a much more compelling way. That the fact that they killed him in the show kind of destroyed a lot of my anticipation for what might come in that
I
part of the
think
story.
the thing is with Duran is that I think a lot of people look at it and they fool themselves and they're fooled into thinking that Duran is as good as he thinks he is. Whereas if you look at the way his plans have enveloped, his revenge plan, well, Tywin's dead, Free's dead. You know, Tywin's grandkid is dead at this stage, and there's another character that ranges off far into the east. And I'm not going to spoil the plot line,
Yeah,
but yeah, we all know what happens to him too. And it just looks like this plot that's been 20 years in the making,
yeah.
this master plan. It doesn't really work, and everybody who you wanted to have revenge on has either died or doesn't matter anymore. I mean, Amory Lorch is dead. The Mountain is, for all Duran knows, the Mountain is dead. As is Tywin. It's what is your revenge? What is your revenge plan? If everyone else you were trying to get revenge on is dead, and your
Yeah.
plan still doesn't actually work.
Well, fair enough. No, I suppose that does make a lot of sense. I hadn't really thought about that. I just, well, yeah,
And if you
fair
think
enough.
the other thing is that with his plan being so secretive, it does make sense that the people in his homeland would be so resistant to it if they found out that the prince that was so popular has just died and that their prince is not doing anything about it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, that's my take on it. But I don't really mind it either way because this
Yeah.
you get a storyline here, you get the
No,
other
no, that
storyline
is
as well.
as much as I have crowed on about how much that certain certain changes that have been made have pissed me off much more than they should. I do still very much enjoy the fact that I am getting two similar but ultimately diverging in different stories in two different mediums. So it's while the bones of both stories is still the same. I get to read one version and I get to watch another and enjoy them both for what they are. And so
Yeah,
while it's, I mean, one of the biggest things, as long as where they end up is the same, because what is going on with Jamie now, as I say, I've not seen the preview for the next episode, but where I think his story will be going for the next episode, I cannot articulate how much I am anticipating that because of the
yeah,
books.
hmm
And so, assuming that pays
definitely.
off, I'll be thrilled.
The other thing is that with the different storylines, when the final book does come out in 2025, we'll all have a
God, that
reason to
early?
read it as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I'm being optimistic.
2016 now. Yeah, that's it.
I'm,
2030
I'm
at the
giving
latest,
another
maybe.
year and a half for this book and then an equal amount of time for the next one after that.
Fair enough. Um, yeah, I've still not read any of the chapters that Germ has put out for the Winds of
Do you know,
Winter.
Wales might even have
But
beaten the All Blacks by then.
I very much doubt that.
Yeah,
Um,
I very much. Wales have probably been the Republic of UKIP by then, I guess. But
oh, um, Christ. It's.
one of the things I think we were thinking about though was the what the the all Westeros and Essos rugby team would look like.
Well, West. Oh, you're going to bring Essos into this now. It's because I can remember that I've done this before and I soundly said that, Essos and Westeros should be two very different teams. And Christ knows
Oh,
who
if
you
we had them as
actually.
facing off as different teams,
Well, yeah,
yeah,
naturally, because it's. I mean, there are two ways you can do it. Well, three ways maybe. The first is that you have. Actually, no, there are two ways. The Your way that you're implying there is that you just get uh, an amalgamation of 15 mixed from all players across every land that we've seen so far, which is fine. The other way, of course, is that you have a 15 made up of Westeros, whereby those 15 come from each individual seven kingdoms, and then they play off against Khal Drogo and Dario, and then the other 13 members that would make up the team of Essos. Um,
Yeah, so I mean that could work as well. But we do have criteria. So look, there's no picking Drogon as your number eight.
Oh, you
You
can't
can't
pick.
have
Yeah,
one as one of your locks.
no,
They
I think
have to be
that's
human
that's.
characters.
I think the omission of 1-1 is a bit. I understand the omission of Drogon and even Viserion and Rhaegal, despite the fact that they're tiddly compared to their brother. But I think that ignoring 1-1, I think is a shame because if you had him at say hooker, you could have him hook for everyone, and then you'd suddenly have a much improved defensive line.
Well, you'd
Um,
only need a one-man pack, wouldn't you?
exactly. Um, but so yeah, I can. What I'm annoyed at is we did a Westeros 15 about a month and a half or 2 months ago, and I can't for the life of me find where it is. We've done.
We've
Well, yeah,
definitely lost it, haven't we?
there are a couple on Reddit. There's more than a couple on Reddit that we've done. Um, but I think we just managed to nail down so brilliantly what would have been, I think, the best, uh, the best
Yeah,
15
we did. I mean,
is.
we had the mountain at the second row, didn't we?
Wait,
Um, and and the hound latching onto his hip to
no,
play
no,
at
no.
number seven with his.
Oh, I can't remember what it was. I don't know whether that's one thing. I don't think the Hound and the Mountain in the same squad would be even remotely close to something resembling a good idea. And so you need to pick.
Well,
It's
it didn't really
granted.
work out for Manitou Langi and Chris Ashton, did it? So I can see how you're
Well,
saying that.
fair enough.
If
But
they just
it's
started fighting on the pitch, that could be a bit distracting, couldn't it?
yes, as long as they've not got swords, I'm sure it'll be fine. Um, but it's the thing is, I'm having so much trouble now remembering
Well, I know
where
that
they
I
were.
definitely had Rob Stark at 13, just because the brilliant tactician that he was.
Shouldn't that make him a 10? Um,
Well, no, because he's not the playmaker. I think the ten's got to be Jamie Lannister. Objectively, the
that's
best character in all of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I agree with that. I will say well, but this is clearly pre-hand getting chopped off though. Yes. Um,
If anybody does listen to this and they disagree with that, please feel free to email us telling us exactly why you're wrong.
and we will then respond to you with exactly why you're wrong, because there is. Well, I suppose I mean in fairness, I shouldn't really be siding them already, but in fairness, the show hasn't done as good a job as the book at showing how much better he is as a character. I think.
Well, put it this way: Jamie's got so much credit in the bank that when he
Yeah.
returns for season four, and he turns up, and the directors see him, the writers see him, and they're like, "You're in a real hurry. We just need to film him as is. Keep your leather jacket on. We're not even going to bother with the hair extensions this time round." And he just literally looks like he's just came out of 1999.
Yeah, I suppose a lot of it does come off the fact that Nikolai Coster-Waldau does seem to be one of the coolest people ever. Um,
Yeah. Although he wasn't as cool in what was that film? That terrible film I watched, The Other Woman.
I've got no idea.
It's where he's
Um,
having two extramarital affairs.
oh, good for him.
Yeah, it's typical Jamie Lannister kind of
He
thing to
was, in
do.
fact,
Well, it's exactly the opposite, isn't it? Really.
just to very, very loosely connect it. He was also in the film Wimbledon with. He played Paul Bettany's tennis partner, coach thing. Um, to just connect it very briefly again to rugby before we finish off the 15 is I think he looks a lot like Mark Cueto, and if there was ever some film of the English team that had Mark Cueto in it, Nikolai Coster-Waldau would be the way to go.
Who would play Martin Johnson in that film?
Ron Perlman, no, I've got no idea. And Joel Edgerton would have to play
I think you
Alex
could only
Good.
have Will Ferrell in a very sarcastic role.
That could work. Um, okay, so see, let's try.
I definitely had Brienne as my blindside flanker as well.
Really, I would. I'm trying to think. It's see. This is the problem. I can't remember, and it's pissing me off so much. I think I would have had. I think I would have had the Blackfish in the centre, just because the calculating mind. Stannis, the true king of Westeros, even though I'm not entirely sure he is the true king of Westeros. We can discuss that in a minute. I think would be the best choice for the referee, despite the fact that in an Essos versus Westeros game, there would be that slight hint of bias.
Well, I had Stannis as my defense coach.
Do you really though?
Yeah, Stannis as defense coach, Ned Stark as attack coach, and
Would
then
I think
Tywin Lannister as head coach.
Tyrion Lannister's defense coach, I think, is a better match.
I think I'd be counting Tyrion as Team Essos now.
What? Yeah, but no, only on residency though. He could still play for
Yeah,
both.
he qualifies. Nobody in Westeros wants him anyway.
Um,
He's definitely qualified for me. Him, Jorah, Barristan, they're all Team Essos for me now.
oh yeah, Barristan. I don't think Barrister would make a team. He's a bit too old and dead. Um,
So Stannis and Robb Stark and Ned Stark and everybody else.
that's this. I suppose yeah, this could get a lot more difficult if we're only allowed to pick the living. Um, but it's yeah. Let's think. Jamie, I'm sure must have been a half, or maybe I had Littlefinger as one of the halfbacks, just because he's got that that mind that because he does seem to be the one playing everyone in the show and the book. He seems to know
I remember who I had
everything
as my
happening everywhere.
halfback, and it's definitely the best pick for the halfback because he's definitely the most spiky, annoying, hateful character. I think he's actually Nick
Ramsay.
Phipps cast as a TV character. Yeah, Ramsay Bolton is Nick Phipps on TV in a Game of Thrones. He's nippy, he's quick, he's mouthy. He'll start fights that big people can fight for him.
Not that
He's
intelligent.
definitely your yeah. That which is Nick Phipps down to a T, isn't it? And he kind of, looks like a scrum half with the weird, messy hair.
He's got a particularly gormless look, doesn't he? Um,
Yeah.
I think. Let's see. Let's try and go with. Well, let's. Okay, if we start on the front row, I know you're a big fan of having King Bobby B packed down
Yeah,
as one of the
loose head prop.
props.
He's got the Adam Jones look about him, hasn't he, with the big hair and
Oh yeah, I suppose so. It's. I was. A part of me was thinking Wyman Manderley, but I suppose he might actually be too big to even get onto the pitch in the first place.
well, if
Um,
he's too fat to sit on a horse, I think we've got our answer there, haven't we?
yeah. On the other hand, though, if you could get him onto the pitch, you'd never be able to move him off it. So I suppose in that respect, if he could hook a ball, he'd be the best choice there. Um, oh no, I remember Georg Mormont, previous or former Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, I think would have to be the other prop.
Ah, it's an interesting choice. Yeah. So who would you go for as hooker?
Uh, no, Strong Belwas would be an Essos player, wouldn't he?
I would go with Tormund. Tormund as hooker.
Not a lock or a number 8.
No, oh yeah, we're picking combined. We're not picking combined. My combined team would have had Carl Drogo as the number 8, but yeah, I think
No,
Tormund would have to
Carl
be number
Drogo
8
would
then.
have to run out for the Essos team.
Yeah,
The Essosy?
number 8. Yeah, I think definitely go with number 8 as the Hound. Sorry, as Tormund then.
We could come back to hooker fight. So let's go your way and have both the Mountain and the Hound at lock and try to ignore the potential problems you'd have when lifting one of them in the line out.
Well, if you think about it this way, the Hound kind of looks like Sam Whitelock, and the Mountain kind of looks like Brody Retallick. So
Oh dear. Brody Retallick is one very cave trollish looking person.
cave trolls everywhere are offended right now.
Flankers and number 8, I think. So if Tormund's packing down at. So yeah, are we sticking Tormund at 8 or hooker?
Yeah, we are. We go Tormund at 8.
Tormund 8. So if we're. Okay, and so you're definitely set on Brienne at 6?
Brienne at 6. Yeah, I think. Yeah, definitely. She's so physical, isn't she? I mean, gave the Hound as good as it got. So I wouldn't want to run down the blind side there.
That is a fair shout. I'm just trying to see. It comes to this, and if I've not got it all down, I tend to forget all of the other characters in the show.
Well, I think mainly, Ed, what it comes down to is whether you want a 7 or you want a 6.5.
Well, I think going by the undeniable and I suppose complete success of the Archbishop of Banterbury himself, Lord James Haskell, of the current 2016 England Tour of Australia, 6.5 is clearly the way to go. So but I don't know how that corresponds. Is who of Westeros would be a 7, who would be a 6, and who would be a 6.5? Where are you finding that middle ground between who comes on which side? I can't hear you at all. Are you saying stuff?
Sorry, yeah, don't know why it disconnected for a second, but
Yeah,
it's back on.
fine. As long as there's not a fine. I'm unplugging my headphones now. I don't know. That's an odd blip. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah.
don't know what happened. I think I might have accidentally muted it.
Oh, that would have been bloody silly. Who would you? How would you differentiate them between a 6.5 and a 7 in Westeros? Who would you have? I suppose.
Well, you can't pick Jorah, can you? Because Jorah's Team Essos now we've
Oh,
established.
at
Um,
open side, you've clearly got to have Bronn.
yeah, that's
He
right. Absolutely.
might
Can't
be a
believe we
touch
didn't think.
tall, but I think he's got that. He's got that 7. I mean, he could be that. He's got that very Richie McCaw nature. He's got that when in the Battle of Blackwater, when the Hound comes up to talk about him, his first instinct is to prepare himself by grabbing the knife he's got sheathed behind him. I think
Well,
he'd suit the
yeah.
7 mould very well.
I think he's very sneaky, isn't he? He's exactly the kind of person that you'd expect to get away with playing the ball while he's off his feet. So definitely Bron. I think yeah, that's a good shout.
So it's half backs. We then go to Ramsay Bolton at 9 and Jaime Lannister at 10.
Definitely.
I'm putting my foot down and saying that the Blackfish, Brynden Tully, has to be in the centres. And I know you want Robb Stark there, so whether we've got Playmaker and Crashball or Hammer and Rapier, I think it's
Well, I think we've got to go with the all-time great centre partnership and have the non who likes Blackfish at 12 and the Conrad Smith like Rob Stark at 13.
absolutely. That leaves then, I suppose, how best to have, say, we've got 3 left, and as 2 wings and a fullback, I'm thinking Jon Snow, Oberyn Martell, and Loras Tyrell,
I
unless
think
you
that's
can
a
give
pretty
me an
good shout, isn't it?
alternative.
No, I'm happy with that. That those three sound perfect. But you got to have Jon Snow at 15. I think
Well,
you can't have
absolutely.
anybody else
Nothing's getting
leading your
past
counter
him.
attack.
He is the watcher on the wall. He guards the realms of men from whatever. I can't even remember how their oath goes now. So he's letting nothing through to the try line. I'm sure we've omitted.
Which
Oh,
means we've got one pick left,
for
which is the
Hooker.
hooker, and I think by default that probably goes to Ned Stark.
Oh shit, we've not even picked Ned Stark. How about put Ned Stark at 8 and Tormund at 2?
Yeah, I think that'll work on it.
We've definitely forgotten someone, but I think that we're going to have to type this up and have
Or the
this.
Blackfish goes to number 8, and then Ned Stark goes to 12.
Oh, I like that father and son combo. Be like having Andy and Owen
Yeah,
Farrell playing at the same team at the same time.
that even be. They should probably make that happen for a charity game.
Assuming Ireland will not to let Andy Farrell go now. Um, I suppose we could always attempt the bench, but that might be a bit too much for us.
I think it'd be too many characters, wouldn't it? Yeah. But
Yeah.
if we were going with the Essos,
Well, it's we could do, but I can think of so few characters over there that would be. I mean,
exactly, yeah.
granted, you could get a few going by residency, but I think even by residency laws, I don't think anyone's really been over there long enough. I mean, Viserys maybe, Daenerys possibly. You could bring the dragons, but I think Barristan, Jorah, and actually Jorah might be the only one who does qualify on residency. Um,
Mm. It
oh,
would be
okay.
one of those teams, wouldn't it, that have a few world-class players and then the rest is just rubbish.
Final thought then to our Westerosi 15. Who would be captain? I'm thinking Blackfish just because, strategist wise, and he's awesome, and I've got a bit of a man crush on him. But you can't really, dispute, say, the Jaime Lannister of the Jaime Lannisters or the Ned Starks of the world, or even Robb
I
Stark,
would definitely
considering
go with Rob.
Robb. All those bits,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. I wouldn't trust Ned Stark's inability to. I think Ned Stark would be too honourable to complain to the referee.
Maybe. Well,
And Robb Stark never lost a battle, so there is that.
that is true. Got murdered
So
at dinner though, which was a bit foolish of him. Um, let's close that. Okay, so we're going for nearly 40 minutes. I know you wanted to bring up who would win in a fight between Smaug from The Hobbit. What was that noise? Are you still there? Is it just me now? It might just be me now. Call ended. Interesting. Am I still streaming? I'm still streaming. This is going very well. Let's see if this works. If not, I'm just talking to myself. Wait,
yeah,
there we
that
go.
dropped off for some reason. Can you hear me again?
Yep. Okay, don't know what
Yeah,
happened
and we're
there, but
back.
we're still streaming, and so this
I
is
think
not
that's
going
probably a timely
brilliantly.
reminder to
Move on. Yeah,
to
I
the
was going to
next
say,
segment of the
I remember
podcast.
you want to. I'm not sure how much I could really say on this. I could give some insight, but I believe you wanted to have a discussion over who would win in a fight between Smaug from The Hobbit, the dragon from Shrek for some reason, and Drogon.
Yeah, I
Now,
mean, I think the dragon from Shrek was definitely there for more comedy reasons.
I
But I
suspect he
do.
does horse in that particular race. He'd be. It's been a while since I've seen the film, but if he's at such a size that allows a donkey to copulate with her, um, perhaps she's not quite big enough to square off against two of the larger dragons in fantasy fiction going.
Yeah, I definitely think though that Smaug's too much of a talker, um, and he's just spent all this time just learning how to talk and
What?
gotten
So
lazy. I mean, can you imagine Drogon letting anyone steal treasure
no,
from him?
Drogon's just gonna. It's Smaug's gonna get caught monologuing, so Drogon can go in for the kill. Which I think you may have a point there, but I think only a point. I think as it stands now, particularly with regards to where Game of Thrones is at in its current timeline. Drogon is granted has grown a lot recently, is still exceptionally small for a dragon. And so I reckon for the time being at least, Smaug would have the edge. But because Smaug is, stuck in that lonely mountain, cherishing all his gold that he'll at some point lose, I think Drogon would have a better chance to, carry on feasting on sheep and small children and horses and mammoths and the like. That in a couple of years, considering these particular dragons are said to carry on growing forever until death, I think Drogon would have the edge, but only when he was a bit older.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like one of those things where one's had his time and gotten the riches and the glory, and it's just well resting on his laurels a bit now. And then the other one, the young upstart's going to come in and go for the kill. I'm definitely going with Drogon.
Yeah, fair enough. And of course, there is the fact that Smaug got brought down by that lowly single arrow. Granted, we don't know what it takes to
Yeah,
take down Drogon yet, but I suppose it also depends if. The other thing is, Drogon doesn't necessarily need a rider, but he doesn't. And I know dragons are supposed to be fairly intelligent, but Smaug certainly, on a base level, perhaps Drogon would lose to Smaug, but Drogon ridden by Daenerys would beat Smaug. Possibly.
possibly. Yeah.
Um, but so
Right. So
it's.
now we've got the Dragon War out of the way. We've got
Well,
left to cover some spoilers.
Well, we could. I think one thing I keep on wanting to discuss is, which I reckon is quite split fairly. I don't think it's even, but who would you say out of the current players, regardless of whether it was usurped or it's theirs by blood right or inheritance, who do you think has the clearest and the strongest claim to the throne, regardless of whether you think they will end up there? Out of all the players, who do you think going by various laws and rules of the Seven Kingdoms, who do you think has the most right to it?
That'd be the girl with the 3 dragons, the couple of hundred ships, and the 100,000 soldiers.
I suppose just by usurping the usurpers.
Yeah, birthright and
Well,
just
it's
being birthright doesn't really matter. What just matters is who's got the biggest army and who's the strongest and most feared. And I think that's definitely her now.
fair enough. Well, that's, I suppose, one way of putting it. Because she
Yeah, what do you
was...
think?
Well, this is a massive spoiler warning for, I suppose, anyone who is still listening who isn't too into the books, but I think potentially Jon. And I know, again, this goes to, I know that I'm sure, if Daenerys didn't particularly like that idea, she would come along and then Jon would end up very much melted snow rather than snow, and be dragon fodder. But if...
Pretty much John Waters then, wouldn't he?
Yeah, quite.
It's a book joke.
Yeah, I got it. I think his claim to the throne is, I suppose, the most legitimate. But if not Jon, I think it would technically be Stannis, but because he's dead. See, this is actually, I hadn't really thought about this since Stannis died. Because I think Jon has a stronger claim than Daenerys.
I don't think Davos has thought about it ever since Stannis died, either, to be honest.
But no, think about this. I think if Jon is born of Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark, then
Spoilers.
if well, I did say spoiler warning, so if they're still listening, and it's not even confirmed, this is just a crackpot theory. I'm wearing a tinfoil crown right now, it's so crazy. But if Jon Snow is really born of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, Rhaegar being the heir of Aerys Targaryen, who was killed by Jaime in King Robert's Rebellion, Rhaegar would inherit the throne from Aerys. If Rhaegar dies, it would go to his children rather than his sister. And so if Lyanna has been married to Rhaegar, even secretly, Jon is then technically a true Targaryen, and so he has more claim than Daenerys. If it's not Jon's claim to the throne that counts, then Daenerys definitely does. And if you go by just the usurping, then it's perhaps one of King Robert's bastards, if they can be legitimised. And so Gendry somewhere, when he finally rocks up off his rowing boat with just the biggest guns anyone has ever seen, I think he has more of a right in that sense. And so the only way in which Daenerys has any right to the throne is by being herself a usurper.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're ever going to see Gendry again, but I also don't expect Jon to survive through the end of the series, which is why I don't think that he'll end up on the Iron Throne.
Ooh, bold call.
Yeah, I think he's going to die in the fight against the White Walkers, and that will be the end of him.
Yeah, but then Lady Mel can just come along and bring him back.
I think she's pretty certainly going to die next episode, from what I've seen.
Well, I'd rather you not go too far into that.
Well, all I've seen is just from the preview, the episode preview, the 30-second trailer.
Fair enough.
So it's just basically Davos is grassing on her for killing Shireen.
Oh, yeah. That's...
In a very, tell them what you did, that's an exact quote, tell them what you did.
Oh, I tell you what, where do you reckon... Would Davos, do you reckon, have had a place in the Westeros 15? I hadn't really thought about him.
He could, but I think they've got so many stellar players in there.
Yeah.
Unless you put him at scrum half, if you don't want the Ramsay influence.
Well, no, because he's got half one of his hands has like no fingers. How'd he pass? I've gone on from the point.
That's
so,
a good point.
It seems like I suppose we probably should think about bringing this to some manner of an end soon.
Predictions for the finale.
Predictions for the finale. You've got kind of an edge because you've already seen the upcoming, and I think you've had something spoiled for you before. But I'm not sure. I feel like I should have watched the preview before starting this chat. But I can't imagine at all that Euron has had enough time to build ships and turn up to Meereen. So at the very least, we might have Daenerys actually using all the ships and setting sail for Westeros.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some characters start setting sail. I think she's going to be one. I think the other one's going to be
Arya,
Arya. Yeah.
Arya, I mean, she left. I can't remember how long it took her to get to Braavos in the first place, but Braavos is not particularly far away from Westeros. The stretch of the narrow sea that she would have to cross is minuscule compared to the journey that Daenerys is going to have to start making. So I suppose they could expedite her story somewhat by have Arya already being in Westeros by the next episode, or she does get on a boat, say Valor Morghulis to someone, give them that iron coin, and then she gets on her way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not entirely sure how much more they can do to close up what's going on in the north, to be honest. I mean, Jon, I suspect, will have to have words with Littlefinger and Sansa about what's gone on between them and why the army suddenly rocked up. I think the two
Yeah, I
biggest
definitely
points,
think so.
the two focal points of the episode, I imagine, would be at the Wall and at King's Landing. And that the last thing that Jon said to Dolorous Ed, the now 999th commander of the Night's Watch, before leaving was, "Don't knock it down while I'm away." And so I'm thinking perhaps the very last shot of this series will be the wall coming down and the White Walkers coming to it. And I don't know whether that'll be Bran's fault or whether it is just them
Possibly.
advancing on the wall. And I think Cersei will go absolute batshit crazy in King's Landing, and the rumours of stocks of wildfire buried under the city turning out to be true, as confirmed by Maester Qyburn, she will do something just not particularly sensible, in keeping with the rest of her ideas the last few series, and set fire to the Sept, killing the High Sparrow, maybe killing her son. I'm not sure. I'm kind of no longer sure whether or not Clegane Bowl will take place. I think Sandor is too far away from King's Landing for that to be. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you. I was just
Oh
yeah.
no, it's fine. I'm suddenly
I
seeing
think.
I'm seeing problems with Skype all of a sudden, so I was worried we'd cut again. I
Oh,
think
okay.
yeah.
No,
So
I mean,
Sandor's too far away from King's Landing to affect. So if Clegane Bowl is ever to happen, it won't happen this series, but next.
yeah, I mean, I don't see it happening anytime soon. To be honest, I think they may very well fight towards the end of the run, but I think there's a lot of stuff to cover in this finale, and it's the longest episode ever of Game of Thrones.
69
But I
minutes.
think the
Yeah.
yeah, and I definitely think they're going to include Dawn in there, the Dornish, because
Oh god,
we
I'd
remember
completely
that they
forgotten
set
about
up a
them.
couple of episodes ago that Varys has travelled across, and I think he'll be going there. I think he
Oh
may even
really?
be meeting it with a surprise attendant. Yeah,
You don't think he's going to end
and
up
then
in
set.
King's Landing and we'll get the epilogue from Dance of Dragons?
No, I think it's going to be combined with the murders will be combined, so they'll maybe have a different protagonist. But
Oh okay.
yeah, I think that Varys will end up in Dawn, and maybe he'll have a meeting with certain characters. Maybe some surprise characters will attend
I hadn't even thought about that
to
being a possibility, but I quite like the
a
idea.
George Bush style coalition of the willing.
um,
But yeah, so I think that's what's going to happen in that respect, and then you're also going to see maybe some of the wall. Euron, I think, will be back. In the books, he has a horn, which he thinks will help him control dragons, but maybe it's got a different purpose. Maybe it's the horn that you hear about Ygritte telling Jon that they have that could
the Horn
bring
of
the wall down.
Joramun. Is it Joramun?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so if they've
Um,
got that, then cat amongst the pigeons. But I think we're also going to see some more of
I
Bran,
th-
maybe. So it just seems a jam-packed
Bran
episode, really,
Bran
doesn't it?
definitely has to show up, if for no other reason than we need some finality and closure on the Tower of Joy sequence.
I
But
mean,
with I honestly, as I said,
HBO really made Miguel Sapochnik earn his money this year, didn't they? He's
yeah,
definitely, I
we
think he's gone
he
with the
has
two
earned it.
longest episodes. So
Because they also look to be the two best. But I'm maybe
Yeah, so I mean, I think we're going to see some of Craster's baby in the season finale, just because I think that there's got to be some purpose for Sam going to Old Town. He's got to find out something. There's got to be some information he's going to come across, and I think maybe, hopefully, it won't be.
Nearly a well done podcast by Line Break Rugby on Game of Thrones, which we're trying to title Line Breaking the Wheel. We hope to
Yeah,
have
I
another
think
one of
it's
these again, not quite so
fitting,
amateurly done. Any last words,
and
Nero?
maybe a review of the season.
Yeah, that'd be quite good, and perhaps branching off into. I mean,